So here is what I picked from the first 5 rows. Hey, I'm standing in my corn patch. I've been growing corn for a while now, and typically I would plant one heirloom, usually Hickory King, and my normal method was I would plant 4 kernels for each plant that I wanted, and I would space them 18 inches apart and have 3 foot in between each row. And then I would, this would be in February, I would water them to get them going, and then once they got about ankle high, I would thin them out to 1 plant per 18 inches. And that did very well for me. Typically from a patch this size, I would get about 10 1-gallon bags of shucked corn. And it was all very long ears, white, uniform kernels. I would have some problems with mold if I left them on the stalk too long. And then usually around June, I would pull them down and husk them, and then put them in a corn crib for a few more weeks to dry out. And then I would shuck them and freeze them. So then one year I read Joseph Lofthouse's book about Landrace gardening. And the basic concept is that you plant a bunch of different heirlooms together with the hope that they outcross, they breed between each other. And the goal is to get a bunch of genetic diversity into your plants. And you kind of, the basic idea is to neglect the things you plant. So don't thin them, don't fertilize them, etc. And anything that produces a seed moves on to the next round. And then you do this numerous times. And by the 3rd or 4th generation, you're supposed to have a very adapted variety that's adapted to your land and doesn't need a lot of work or inputs. And so I thought that was a great idea. So I started doing that about a year ago. I got about 10 different varieties of heirlooms from all over the South, and I planted them all together. And I thinned them out, or I didn't thin it out at all. I weeded one time when they were about knee high, and then I just let them go. And my results were I got a bunch of small ears that were not fully developed, but they did produce seed. And I probably had a couple pounds of seed. So then spring rolled around, and this patch is all plants from the original Landrace that I planted last August. So this is the 2nd generation Landrace. And I picked about 5 rows this morning. I just got done husking them, and they're about to go in the crib. And I'm going to show you the results and some of the more interesting looking ones. So in August, which is about 2 months away, I'm going to plant this patch again. And I'm going to use seed from this current patch that I'm sitting in right now. So that'll be a 3rd generation of outcrossed corn. And I'm going to plant, 10% of the seed from last fall. That way I'm kind of backfilling some of the 1st generation's genetics, mixing it in with 90% will be this patch that you see here. But let's go check out the husked corn, and I'm going to show you some of the outcross stuff. All right, this is the result of about 5 rows. So you can see I got a milk crate full of ears. A lot of them are this mix of white and pale yellow. I'm not seeing a lot of pure white. So that means my Hickory King and my Thompson Prolific and a bunch of other Trucker Special Whites, Trucker's Favorite White. The white really didn't. Here's one that seems to be pretty uniform white. So it looks like, I think a lot of it outcrossed, because I'm not seeing any just straight white. It could be that those just didn't survive the thinning. There's a lot of variables that you got to think about. But the beauty of the landrace is that you really don't have to think about it. You just keep planting and outcrossing, planting and outcrossing. Whatever survives makes it to the next round. So here are some of the more interesting ones. This is uniform. I don't even remember what this is, but it's all red. So I want to hang on to that, make sure that goes into the pile for August. Now there were a couple that already had some variance in their kernel color, so it's really hard to remember. And look, you can see here I had some mold issues. This air conditioner just kicked on. Sorry if the audio sucks. But these ones, I would say these are for sure outcrossed. Nothing that I had in my possession looked like this. This is a similar one to that. Looks like it got a lot of different genetics. Here we got a couple. See, this one's more yellow, but none of them are uniform really. This one's more white, but there's a lot of yellow in it. And this one definitely got some outcrossing. This here is my corn crib. It's fenced in, has a gate, and I have a rabbit cage inside it, and I just stack up my corn inside the rabbit cage and nothing seems to bother it. I'm just gonna leave it out here for a couple weeks, let it get nice and dry. It has a tin roof, keeps the rain off of it. I'm gonna load it up. So I'm just gonna stick these ears into the cage. This is also my peanut crib, or whatever needs to be dried crib. I just stick it in here. Here's a spider doing its thing in there, so it can help keep some of the bugs off. There's an old peanut on the floor there that never made it in. So I just throw the corn in, and it's just gonna chill in here. So there's my milk crate loaded up, and I'll have probably about 4 times that much when I'm done. Whenever I have a few hours, I'm just gonna go out there and pick and then shuck, or husk rather, and then throw it in the crib. I'll probably be done doing that in about 4 days. So I live in north central Florida, and I'm in zone 9A, and I'm lucky to have 2 growing seasons. So I can knock out 2 generations of landrace in 1 year. So by next spring, it'll be a 4th generation. And that's when things should really become interesting. Really, in the book, it said 3rd generation. So once I plant this stuff, I might expect to get much better results. And honestly, I already got much better results than in the fall. My first season I plant in February and then harvest around June. And this is for grain corn because I let it dry out on the plant as much as it's gonna. And then I plant again in August and harvest again in October, November. Now there's a couple caveats. This year I did a lot better this round, but I think that the corn in general grows better in the spring. I'm not sure why, but I suspect that it's because it follows the black-eyed peas, and they get a lot of nitrogen left in the soil because I just till them under basically, or let them die, and I don't pull them out or anything. And also in my garden, I rotate it all the time, and I have dug all these pumpkin pits and watermelon pits over the years and thrown in a bunch of rotten meat and rotten wood, and so there's stuff in there that might still be feeding the corn. But the corn always did better when I took care of it. And it's very hard to not take care of it. Every time I'm out there picking, I'm like, man, I should just thin it out next time, or I should just hit it with some compost every few months. But that's not really within the spirit. I guess the spirit is if do that if that's what you want to do. If you want to thin it every year and fertilize it every year, then that's what's going to select itself. So if you just neglect it and it emerges fine, then you don't have to do any of that stuff. So, but when you're getting these dinky little ears, you know, it's hard to just let that happen. But I've gotten much better ears off this generation, and I'm not even done harvesting. So that is the results of my Landrace for Generation 2. I probably will just leave it at that. Maybe if something interesting happens in the next few days, I'll make an amendment, but it's going good and it's exciting, and I'll plant it again in August.